This is certainly not the video I expected to be filming today. Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. We are back with another animation analysis video, and ladies and gentlemen, I've been bamboozled. As a lot of you saw in my previous video, I did an animation analysis on the old LR Baby, assuming that Dokkan would be releasing LR Baby as a part 2 for the card where, you know, Goku fights Baby. But no, we have had a fast one pulled on us, ladies and gentlemen. And we are actually going to be getting a LR Omega Shenron, which I am 100% not complaining about. Obviously, a lot of people have been really wanting a LR Omega Shenron for a really long time now. And it makes sense because obviously we have basically gotten like every other version of Omega, right? We've gotten Dokkan Fest regular Omega, we've gotten Sin, we've gotten all the Shadow Dragons, we've got all the Shadow Dragons together, right? So it only makes sense that obviously we would eventually get a LR Omega Shenron. So we're going to hop in, look at this guy's animations. He actually has like a million different things that he does. So it will be pretty cool to see all of his different animations. By the way, as we watch through these animations one time, I always like to preface these videos by saying I am by no means a professional when it comes to animation or anything like that. I am just a guy who watches a lot of Dokkan animations and looks at the assets and knows to make them up. So I think I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good Dokkan animation. Now, this guy has a ton of stuff. By the way, you're going to be hearing me drink a smoothie throughout this video. Hydrate or Dihydrate Fruit Edition, baby. First of all, this guy has an active skill, which is pretty cool. He has a revival skill, and what you just saw was the intro animation as well, obviously because he is a LR unit. He has the 2 super attacks. So this guy actually has a lot of stuff, and it is kind of interesting, I will say, because I feel like we haven't had a unit with a normal revival in a really long time. Like, I quite literally was like asking the homies when all this stuff was dropping, and we were talking about it in VC. I was like, okay, so like he revives and then does like the attack, right? There was his active skill, and the animations are like, no, it's just a revival. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because it is honestly, I feel like, just been that long since we've gotten a normal revival. You know, now we're getting like finished skills and all this kind of crazy stuff. So it is very interesting to kind of come back to basics and just give us a standard revival skill where Omega just gets a buff after he dies. Pulling some Majin Buu shenanigans here, by the way. I will say, the only unfortunate thing about this unit, this animation analysis with this unit, I should say, is because I am doing this video the morning that these animations drop, so I can release this video on the same day. Unfortunately, we do not have the direct comparison video as we do in some other animation analysis videos. So obviously we're going to have to kind of use our best judgment on our animations here. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at these in the slow speed. By the way, I apologize if you can hear my fan in the background. I feel like I've said this in every video I record recently, but it is so hot where I live that your boy's got to have that fan on 24/7, or I am absolutely cooked. Anyhow, we have Omega eating the Dragon Ball, which looks absolutely fantastic. I really like this animation. I think it's very well done. And I also like this a lot from the perspective of, like, you can see that there are obviously a couple of different like jumps in the poses here, but I feel like it is at the perfect places personally. Everything is where it needs to be, and the quick snappy movements are perfect for this animation. I think that the intro is one of the best animations that he has, honestly. It looks really good. Obviously, we have all the Dragon Balls floating towards Omega, so he can gulp them up, gobble. Technically, I guess you would say that this is actually Sin, right? Because he obviously eats all the Dragon Balls and then becomes Omega. So I guess he technically starts off as Sin, even though obviously the card is Omega Shenron, because, you know, after the intro is done, he's Omega. But either way, you understand my point, right? So this section right here, with the funny green, right? Because I think the Dragon Ball eating animation, all of that looks just fine. I will say that one right there does look a little silly, because it kind of looks like when you pretend to put something in your mouth and you're like putting it behind your head, right? And then you pretend to chew or something like that. But obviously it's just because, I mean, I guess that is kind of what they're doing, right? But I mean, it would be like, it would look like that, like kind of in his teeth. So I mean, like, I don't know. It is definitely a little bit weird out of context, but when it's actually in motion, you're probably not going to notice it anyway. I do like how they actually have him kind of puff his mouth out a little bit, though, and actually have the animation you can see, right? Where he actually does kind of swallow, right? Where his head is moving like that. I will say it is a bit of a shame that they just kind of jump cut from this to this. He's 1 minute, he's, you know, slurping down the Dragon Balls, and the next moment he's like, it's Omega time. But yeah, so we have this nice little smirk here before we transition to this faraway shot. I will say this is a little jarring just because of the fact that, like, I don't know, this is just such a high quality shot, right? Before, and this whole time when he's eating the Dragon Balls, the assets just look so nice. And then immediately cutting to this is just like very extremely jarring to me anyway, as somebody who's like really paying attention to the quality of the assets. And not that this doesn't look good, like it's not low quality, it's just a smaller version of it and it looks like less high quality, if that makes sense. It's just not as big in your face, so it kind of looks like it's more like a Dokkan sprite rather than like a high quality asset. Anyway, we have this little section where they kind of zoom out a little bit, and we have this green fly behind Omega. I actually quite like the green. Sounded like Swamp Thing from DC right now. I love the green. Yeah, this is pretty cool in the background here. I definitely like this little effect. Obviously, this is supposed to be like Omega powering up. We have this very nice shot here of Omega getting even more powerful, obviously from the Dragon Balls, before we have the white light flash on the screen. And this is super well done. The shot where the Dragon Balls, excuse me, actually form on Omega's chest. Very, very cool. And I like, too, how they actually, right, like, besides the fact that, you know, they kind of light up and have these really cool light beams that shoot out of them. This animation's so good. They actually show the Dragon Balls there, like, a little bit of orange before, you know, they actually turn into blue. I quite like that. We have the funny meme. This literally has so much meme potential right here. I know for a fact people are going to make memes out of this. I already made a meme about this and tweeted it. But I digress. Very, very nice shot. I love this angle of Omega on the hill. I will say it is also kind of even more jarring for people who are going to go back and rewatch this animation, because this same shot, right? If we go back to here, it is just this, but zoomed out a little bit more. In fact, it's probably just this specific angle. So I think it's also a little bit weird for me because this Shenron asset, right, looks so much more low quality. Not low quality in terms of like the actual pixel quality, but it just doesn't look as nice as this Omega asset. You can see between jumping between the two of them, right? You can see the big difference right there, how this Omega looks so much better. I think that's also the other jarring thing about this. I don't know why they didn't give that one shot of Sin the same treatment, because everything else in this has the same kind of shading and whatnot, and the same sort of stylistic choices, but they kind of just went full Dokkan on Sin. I don't know why they decided to shaft him. But anyway, yeah, this shot is really, really cool. I like the slow pan out. That is also a very nice touch to make this a little bit more interesting. And oh my gosh, the grin! Oh, that looks very, very nice. If we're talking about high quality assets, ladies and gentlemen, oh my gosh. That is such a nice one. I love the slow pan up as well, because I feel like they easily could have just cut to Omega's face with him saying the voice line for the intro animation, right? Rather than having this nice slow pan up, even showing the little bit of like the Dragon Balls there, right, that are stuck on his chest. Really, really like this shot. I'm glad that they included it. Again, it just makes this a lot more interesting. And obviously for an intro animation, I think this works a lot better, especially having that little pan there. Very, very cool. I can't get over how good this shot looks, bro. It's so weird because there's so many shots in here that look so nice, but then there's so many things that are like a little janky, to be honest. Okay. Starting us off, we have the 12 key super attack. First of all, this shot just like paused, right? Obviously, we're not talking about still frames when we're animation or analyzing, but this does look very nice, if I do say so myself. This is a very nice high quality asset here. I like this little shot where they have Omega zoom forward. It looks super crisp. They do kind of do this little effect here, right, where they sort of bend the asset a little bit before he actually kind of ducks down, right? You can see that they just sort of squish it a little bit. Can I actually get this captured in the frames? Yeah. When he's leaning forward a little bit, you can see that they kind of just like squish him a little bit. It's a little bit easier to tell like this. And it's so subtle that you can't really tell because he immediately dips forward, right? And then goes to fly off. Perfect cut, by the way, on going like down, right? When Omega leans like that. perfect cut to do that right there. They did such a good job on this. Now, this section right here, I gotta say, it's so cool in concept. And Dokkan has done plenty of shots like this before where they have this character like zooming forward, right? And it does kind of look like the boy Omega is sort of coming through the matrix here. I like how they do have a little bit of small movement when Omega's way far in the background there. However, I will say the pose changes in this section are extremely jarring for me. The first time I noticed this, you know that something is a problem if I notice it on the first watch. The first time I watched this, I saw Omega change here and here, and I was like, oh no. We have a little bit of nice minimal movement there before we have another slight pose change, which isn't as bad, but it is still a little bit noticeable. And then we kind of have Omega lift his hands up like he's getting ready to hit a volleyball back. And then we have him slowly come into frame before then winding even farther back and another pose change. Before then finally readying up to hit Goku. And they do a little cool effect here where they kind of mask the actual hit by putting a impact frame there, right? They have the white light, or the pink light rather, I guess I should say, right? Let me go back to that. They have the pink light there for a second, which is kind of an interesting choice. But then they have the like slash, which I will say is kind of weird because obviously he's punching him, but I'm assuming that's just how the impact frames are in the anime, so they wanted to mimic it. And not to mention, I guess you could also chalk that up to like the spikes on Omega's hands kind of slashing right that. Regardless though, this section right here, I just feel like it could have been a little bit more well done and just more fluid, because I feel like they just took a bunch of like jump cuts there. They like skipped a couple of steps because that could have been so much more fluid, and I've seen it fluid on other animations as well. But the final hit does look pretty nice, and you have this really cool shot of Goku flying through the actual buildings here. I will say, this is a great way to not have us look at the stinky sprites. Granted, this is obviously kind of benefited by the fact that this is, of course, you know, the reference material that they're taken from, but they quite literally just put a black dot on the screen, right? Obviously, you're not going to be seeing what enemy you're fighting from this distance anyway, so you don't have to look at the sprite here, because obviously it's just this little, like, you know, blur, basically. Very cool on that. Now, Omega coming through here. This is such a sick shot, ladies and gentlemen. You have Omega's head kind of come into frame here, and obviously everything flying around. This is so nice. So, first of all, we have Omega come in, and this angle looks very strange, right? Of course, with Omega kind of stretched out coming in before he twists around. I do not know the exact terminology for this. I believe it is called smearing or animation smearing. I'm pretty sure that is what a YouTube comment on one of my videos has told me before. I think that is the technical term. However, TLDR, it's basically when in animation, right, they take a couple of frames, right, and stretch the character out to some wacky proportions, right? So obviously if you paused it, it would look really weird. But the whole point is that you are supposed to obviously be looking at these in full motion, and so when it's, you know, in full motion, it looks a lot more dynamic, the movement looks a lot more interesting, and it just looks really cool, right? So obviously this looks very strange out of context. Long Omega Shenron right here. I might have to actually tweet out this screenshot because it's just really funny out of context. But obviously Omega kind of stretching out here before we have him twist, right, which is a pretty cool effect. You have Omega's feet kind of in frame there before he twists around a little bit, which is a pretty cool little effect, right, with him flying forward towards the enemy, right, and you actually have him twist a little bit as he's going. Now, I will say, the one thing that I do find a little bit strange about this whole sequence right here, I really like this, right, again, with the funny stretched Omega, right, with the smearing. But my problem is, it kind of doesn't feel right, because you have Omega come into frame like this, right, where he's kind of like parallel with the cameraman, I guess is what you would say. You know, the cameraman never dies, so of course he ain't afraid of Omega Shenron. But it's really weird because, like, this shot kind of implies that Omega's gonna start moving towards the background, right? But then he's right back twisting forward. right? Like going in the same exact direction he was when he came into frame. Now, I'm sure what they were kind of going for is that Omega was beginning to twist around to then, you know, end up in this position off screen. But it is still a little bit weird because I feel like it wouldn't really be this angle that he would be twisting at if he came in like this and then ended up like this. I just feel like the way that he's moving isn't correct. I don't know, like the direction that they put him in. It's just a bit strange. I feel like there should be a little bit more in between to kind of really solidify the spin. It's a little interesting the way that they do it, honestly. Because, like, you kind of see that it's sort of implied in, like, the second half. They do a little bit better of a job with it. But I don't know. It just feels a little bit out of place, to be honest. I will say, I do like the little bit of movement that they have towards the end here, right? When Omega's actually twisting around. You can kind of see his feet moving a little bit and spreading apart. That is pretty cool. I do kind of wish that they went full out with this and did some really cool rotoscoping to kind of make this have a lot more of a 3D effect than it does, because even in the latter part, which looks fine, there are still a couple of little pose changes that I feel like you still kind of notice, like there, right, when he finally changes into the final pose. It's just a little choppy, right? I don't know why they didn't go all out and actually just like use rotoscoping, you know, properly. It's kind of weird. Smoothie go crazy. Anyway, I will say this punch from Omega, very, very well done. It is very, very cool. The way that he teleports in obviously looks pretty good. And then I will say, I feel like the pose change here is fine because obviously he's quickly getting ready for the punch, right? And turning around for it. This whole shot executed very, very well in my opinion. I don't really have anything with that. Now, we are coming up to the scene that I have been waiting for, and I know a lot of people have been waiting for. First of all, kind of unfortunate they have Omega's head just turn like immediately. I kind of wish that they had like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is like that in the anime, but I kind of wish they just had like a couple more frames of him turning his head. Not a big complaint though. Regardless, obviously the iconic scene where Omega stretches out his back spikes, which that looks fantastic, by the way. The way that they animated his spikes stretching out like that looks so cool. I mean, it is a very simple effect, right? It is quite literally just taking the spikes and kind of like having the two assets flash in between each other, right? To kind of give that effect. You know, you basically just have these two that are like the thicker white lines than the thinner white lines, and you just flip-flop between them, and then that gives the effect of them growing. But it looks so nice, right? So now, with this, the classic scene, where Omega basically just absolutely penetrates Goku here, right? First of all, the spikes flying up do look pretty cool, right? And it is very interesting that you kind of have this perspective. Sorry, I need a drink of water. Hold on. Omega is currently taking me down. I'm about to end up like Goku unless I take a drink of water, bro. This spike right here, it looks very cool from the angle that you're seeing it at, right? Because obviously it looks a little bit thicker, but obviously it's almost like you're right next to it. You have this impact frame sound off, and then obviously you have Goku impaled there. Interesting that like this spike isn't actually hitting him, but these ones are, and they're actually like stabbed into the sprite. I wonder if the way that they did this, we're gonna have to look when the assets drop, if they literally just cut the edge of the spike in half and it's not actually like clipping into Goku somehow. This is pretty cool though with them moving, right? That is definitely a nice little effect. Here's the thing, right? We are about to get to the Pinnacle Scene, where Omega is basically zapping the enemy, right? This shot is such a cool shot in GT, and again, is a very iconic scene for Omega. But I don't think that the problem is with Omega's animation. I think that unfortunately, this is another L for our greatest rival in Dokkan Battle, the stinky enemy sprite. I actually have the boy Toon Rami's tweet pulled up here to give us a little bit of a side-by-side with the actual anime version, right? Which obviously is super brutal and honestly kind of wild. And then we have the sprite version, which, comparably so, is laughably bad, to be honest with you. And again, I don't think that it's Omega's fault that it looks like that. Granted, looking at this side by side, they definitely could have shaded Omega a little bit better and kind of made the background a little bit better and maybe gave it a little bit more dynamic electricity. But the reason why they don't do that is because obviously, well, I mean, I can't say for the background, but with the electricity, right, they make it a simple circle because they obviously don't, like, aren't able to make it fit around every single sprite in the game, because obviously every single sprite is a little bit different, I guess, except for like most of the humanoid form characters of just like Goku, but even those, like Vegeta is smaller than him, right? With this, they have to make this kind of generic little electricity effect, because how else, you know, if this is Hyrudagon, it's going to look really weird if it's shaped to Goku that he's stabbing, right? And all in all, I think that my final really, like, just kind of unfortunate thought on this is it kind of looks like Goku is less getting impaled by Omega and more like he's kind of caught in between Omega's spikes. It almost kind of looks like even this one, which would be the one that's maybe like impaled inside him, just kind of looks like it's sliding under his armpit, right? This looks a lot more like he's just kind of stuck in Omega's back trap than this, obviously, you know, quite literally being impaled by Omega's back spike. So I don't know, it's just kind of unfortunate. Again, I don't think that this is a problem with Omega's animation specifically. I think it is just, unfortunately, because of how the sprites in Dokkan Battle work, it makes this scene a lot less impactful. Because I know that if I watch this out of context, right, and I did not know that this scene is, you know, when Omega impales Goku, or, well, impales Vegeta, rather, excuse me, I would think that he's just getting, like, caught up in the spikes on his back, rather than getting actually impaled. So, again, just kind of unfortunate, and I know that even if they were allowed to be a little bit more brutal, right, because obviously they show a limited amount of fruit punch in Dokkan, right? A couple cards have it. I mean, funny enough, Super Saiyan 4 Goku actually has some in his super attacks. So obviously, even if they could show that, they just couldn't properly because of how the sprites are, unfortunately. Regardless, though, again, this shot looks just fine for Omega's side of things. And that is actually the end. Ironically enough, that means that this will be a KO screen. I didn't actually realize that until taking a look at these animations. Very, very interesting. We now move on to the 18 key, I believe? Yeah, this is the 18 key super attack. First of all, Orange Omega Shenron, kind of cursed. Orange Piccolo has a new rival. Second of all, this looks really, really cool. Not only from the little bit of the startup here, where Omega lifts his hands up, right? That looks pretty nice for the animation. The actual balls forming in his hand of ki and the little flashing effect on it looks very, very nice. And then we cut to the card art. By the way, super gas card art, I gotta say. It looks really, really cool. I can't wait to see the TUR and the SSR. By the time you're watching this video, that may already be out, actually. But regardless, though, super cool card art. Great way to expand upon the like the current Omega card arts that we had, for sure. But yeah, moving on, obviously it kind of continues, right? We have the funny little purple circle expand around Omega. I love the way that they do this, right? With the little shine effect. I think that that is super cool, right? Even as it grows, obviously, you can see that it kind of shines in between, right? They have a little bit of the shine effect, and then obviously kind of going a little gleam. So, you know, it kind of implies that it's sort of like glass, basically. Oh my gosh, Orange Omega Shenron is so cursed, bro. I can't stop looking at him. He looks like a giant Cheeto, bro. Anyway, obviously this shot is really cool with obviously the energy is supposed to be like flowing through the disc, basically, right? And then being a little bit of a condensed beam, almost like when you shine light through glass, basically. Or like a magnifying glass and you can, you know, fry something on the pavement. That's basically what Omega's doing. And it looks pretty cool. The beam looks nice and the little explosion does look really, really cool and actually pretty dynamic, if I do say so myself. Again, though, this is a little weird because Omega's still orange. Even like this makes sense, right? The whole lighting is orange. But then once the lighting is like normal, right? When it starts to go back to like the normal colors, it's kind of weird that they don't just like have an asset fade in to cover him that's white. He's still Orange Omega Shenron. Regardless, though, I will say maybe this is just a thing of the sprite, and I'm honestly going to chalk it up to that, like kind of looking at this more. But the perspective is super strange here with how big the enemy sprite is, right? It definitely does not look correct with how small Omega's explosion looks as a result of this. The sprite definitely makes this feel out of place. I feel like the character is supposed to be much farther away. At least that's how this perspective with how big the explosion is implies, right? But obviously, because the enemy sprite is so big, it makes it seem like it was just a tiny explosion. But that is unfortunately just another downside of the sprite. Regardless, this is a really cool shot here. Obviously, before we even get the funny eye beam, right? I will say this is a little bit jarring, by the way, too, cutting from Cheeto Omega to then this immediately. I kind of feel like there should be something in between here. Maybe this is how the anime did it. Again, unfortunately, we don't have the side-by-side comparison, but just kind of a jarring cut. Regardless, though, I really like those impact frames and Omega's eye beams. That looks really, really cool. And then, obviously, it freezes Goku up. Yeah, again, like, I feel like this implies that he's a lot farther away than he actually is, but it's just the perspective with the sprite makes it look really, really weird. As well, they did do a very good job with the ice, right? Because obviously, they have to accommodate for all the sprites, so I think making it this shape works really well. It is going to look really weird with big characters, right? Like, again, like Tapion and Great Apes and stuff like that. But I digress. I think it still looks fine for what it is. We have Omega fly up in the background, which actually looks really good. Rock on, Omega. Oh my gosh, man's doing the straight rock on hand signs, bro. Anyway, we have the very, very cool couple of impact frames here. Let me go back to that. First of all, we have this one, right, which is really, really cool. Black and white Omega. And then we have this one where he actually sticks his hands out. This is a great way to skip over some movement while actually making this shot look really, really cool, right? Because obviously then they don't have to animate Omega going from rocker Omega to having his hands out, right? By just having a couple of impact frames, it sort of implies that the movement happened during the flash of light, which is really, really cool. I love the way that the Ki Blasts look here and the little swipes all over Omega, right? That looks super sick, if I do say so myself. Definitely very, very nice looking effect. The green looks cool. Obviously destroying Goku's ice with all of the different Ki Blasts and stuff. Funny shouting Omega. This is also a very nice shot. I love the background here too as well. Very anime-esque. We have the purple lightning come down. And all of the little blasts are hitting Goku, and then the lightning also hits Goku on top of that. I will say, it is kind of interesting that the attacks are like green, white kind of here, right? The little like glass particle looking things, right? And then here they're pink. I guess it's just supposed to be because the sky is pink that they're like reflecting on the sky. I'm sure that it is probably something in GT, and maybe these two attacks were cut together. Again, I'm not sure because I don't have direct source material next to me, but it is a little bit jarring. Regardless, though, the lightning strike looks pretty good. And then the smoke effect looks great, and Omega landing actually looks super nice, if I do say so myself. It is only the final part where he turns that I feel like looks a little bit jarring. Like the actual land when he comes down and then kind of like his body acclimating for hitting the ground looks really good. But then the little head twist I feel like looks a little weird, and him like jutting his chest out immediately. It just looks kind of strange, if I do say so myself. The smoke looks really good though. We have this very cool shot here of Omega zooming forward. They use a very interesting effect for this. I'm sorry, not zooming forward. It's when he kind of pushes the air forward, right, to then attack the enemy over there. It is a very interesting effect that they use for this because they just have Omega standing there, right? But they have the enemy speed lines. They kind of just have him zoom in. But then they basically just have him like pulse. And then they basically just use like a lower opacity version of the image, right? Basically a clearer version of this Omega asset. And just kind of have it like pulse on the screen to sort of imply the air that Omega is kind of pushing forward. I suppose it works. It's just kind of an interesting animation technique that they're using there. But yeah, the explosion itself looks pretty good. At the end here of the 18 key, I believe that is actually the final finishing shot. Very interesting ending, by the way, there of having just Omega's feet in the shot there. Alright, so we move on now to the revival skill. We can actually skip all of this because obviously that's just Goku attacking Omega. And I will say, this is easily the worst animation out of all of them, right? Out of all of the criticism that I've given this unit so far, this is easily the worst. I think the pink goo looks fine, right? It is kind of interesting that they don't really, like, show it that much. Like, they kind of have it forming in the beginning, right, with all little pieces forming, but then they just fade to white and kind of cheap out, and then they have Omega already forming. Like, I would have liked to see all the in-between, and that would have made this animation a little bit better. But, obviously, we have Omega reforming Majin Buu style, and they do kind of just fade to the different assets of him getting a little bit bigger. Now, I feel like in the past, I would have been like, ew, I don't really like that. But from watching a bunch of anime like clips of Dragon Ball side by side with Dokkan, they do that technique a lot for when characters are kind of reforming like this, where they kind of just have the pieces, I guess, just kind of fade to each other like this. So I think that it's fine. I'm sure that is probably exactly how they are referencing GT, so I mean, I think it works just fine. Bubblegum Omega Shenron. This kind of looks like the Deborah cookie if it was made out of Omega instead. Regardless, though, this is pretty cool. Obviously, with the pink fading off of Omega, that looks nice. And here's the part that stinks. I know that this is probably just in the anime that he's standing there talking, but this shot is just so uninteresting. He quite literally just stands there, doesn't move at all. He's just flapping his jaw, right? And they move in very slowly. They zoom in just a little bit, right? This is the most uninteresting revival skill I've ever seen. I know that there are sections where characters just talk in Dokkan animations, and that's fine. But this is just so uninteresting. And then they finally zoom in and just kind of have him do this little stupid smile. Yeah, I think out of all of these, that one's easily the worst animation. It's just not interesting. Like, the pink goop part, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, you know, and Omega reforms, blah, blah, blah. And then he just stands there, and they just kind of zoom in on him for the next, like, 10 seconds or whatever it is. It's just very silly to me that they didn't, like, do this more. They didn't do more with this animation. Ironically enough, it actually really reminds me of STR Super 17's active skill, because STR Super 17's super attack is fire. It's really good, but his active skill stinks, because the beginning part is cool, just like Omega's here with the revival skill, where it's both the 17s fusing together and you have the really cool lighting effects and whatever, and then they literally have the boy standing there just kind of talking, but the shot is just so uninteresting. But at least with that one, I believe they at least like pan up from the ground, if memory serves. This is literally just standing there menacingly. I don't know. It's just so boring to me. I feel like they could have done something more with this, even if this is referencing the anime. I've seen Dokkan take stuff from the anime and expand upon it and make it better. I kind of wish they would have done that for this, but oh well, bygones will be bygones. This is quite literally just a revival skill, so you're only going to see it once a match, and you don't even die in Dokkan Battle these days anyway, because you have 1,000,000 HP at this point, so it's not that big of a deal. But it is definitely the least strong out of all of the animations. I also never noticed Omega has a heart on the bottom of his chest. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, finally, we move on to the active skill for Omega. Of course, this is a pretty iconic Omega Shenron attack, especially for those of us who play Dokkan, because this is literally the boy STR Omega. That's, you know, what the card is based off of. It's based off the scene. I will say, for the little bit of the hand raise, I do kind of wish there was a couple more frames in between that. I feel like the beginning and the end do a really good job, but the kind of middle of it, I feel like is just a little bit lackluster, right? Because this part looks fine. I kind of wish there was just a little bit in between that. That's definitely more of a nitpick, though, for sure. But we have this very cool shot of the zoom out where the energy begins to form above Omega. And you have this very cool zoom in shot for the active skill of Omega talking. You can actually see too the little bits of the fire that are kind of poking in at the top there. And obviously the background's getting a little bit more red and flashing red, because obviously the energy above Omega is colored red. So that's a pretty cool little detail. This very, very cool shot right here. Now, this shot is really disappointing here, because they just kind of cut a bunch of corners. I feel like it's so weird to me, because like this shot looks pretty good, right? With Omega standing over and holding the ball. Him lifting his hand up like that, right? That looks fine. I think that that's animated pretty nicely. But then we have Omega readying to throw the funny attack. And it is where he expands his hands. Where is it? Bam, right? He's about to throw it. Looks pretty nicely animated, right? Let's go back a little bit. YouTube buffering kind of killed me there. He's leaning forward a little bit, and it's kind of sharp, but, you know, it's okay. And then, where is the frame I'm looking for here? Did I pass it? I don't think so. Yeah, they have this little bit of the shot, right, where he's kind of sitting on it, because obviously they got to let the boy talk. Maybe it's not actually as bad as I thought it was. I don't know. I guess here is basically what I was thinking of. I kind of wish they did a little bit more in between movement, because I did notice this when I watched the active skill for the first time. But I suppose watching it again, it's not too bad. But again, as I always say, everything could always be improved upon. And that's also why I like doing these animation analysis videos, because I'd rather look at these animations in a deep dive to really decide whether I like them or not, and not just on the initial viewing, right? But anyway, we have the throw. I will say they do a pretty good job of covering up the change here, because they do the funny by covering it up with the key blast, right? Because you don't notice Omega's pose change, right? Obviously throwing it in front of him, right? It immediately changes because your eyes are focused on the ball flying forward, and then obviously Omega with his hands out. This shot looks really good. I love the lighting effects done here. It's kind of weird how Omega's head looks there. But regardless, the ball flying down, it looks pretty cool with a little spiral effect. Obviously expanding. A very good job on the key blast, by the way. It looks very dynamic, and I love the little like fire bits shooting out there. Pretty cool. Obviously getting hit by the enemy. So this part too, right? It's not too bad, I will say. It is a little bit weird, first of all, the first little thing here, when Omega does like this kind of jarring pose change right there where he pulls his hands back. I feel like they could have just animated that a little bit more. Like, it's such a simple thing to just kind of have his hands go back a little bit more, because when he juts them forward, it feels a lot more appropriate to kind of cut it there. You obviously have the energy, and I will say, I'm sure this is just a shot from the anime, but definitely looks a little funny that it almost looks like his hands are really growing. Obviously, it's just a bit of perspective, because it's supposed to be like your face rather, is closer to Omega's hands. But it definitely looks a little bit jarring for sure, I feel like. I feel like they could have backed it up a little bit, which is ironic considering I usually say Dokkan Super Attack should kind of zoom in a little bit more. We have the energy actually flowing into the ball, though, which is pretty cool. Nice little touch. And the Earth getting a zit on my boy. Obviously, this looks pretty cool, though, with the final shot kind of hitting the Earth. And I assume that that will probably be the KO screen for the active skill. So that is the boy Omega Shenron's animations. Overall thoughts on this guy? It's kind of hard to say. I like these animations. I really do. I think that they are pretty cool for the most part. I will say, this card kind of makes me feel like that the quality of the actual like way that the animation looks in terms of like the style and how high quality all the assets look makes me feel like this is a 2023 essay. However, with some of the movement and just like some of the way that these super attacks are kind of compiled, almost kind of makes me feel like this is a free-to-play unit with some of them rather than a free unit. That's kind of what some of the super attacks give me a vibe of, especially in the way that they cut corners on some of the animation, because they like to do that with a lot of the free-to-play LRs. This is a bit of a weird and kind of unfortunate trend, I will say, with Carnival LRs. I feel like every time I have taken a look at a Carnival LR, whether it is the Cooler movie Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta, or Metal Cooler, or the Christmas Hachiya Goku, or the... Am I missing anybody? Oh, yeah, Birdku, right? Wait, no. The Dokkan Fest was the Goku and Vegeta. I'm sorry, Metal Cooler and then Birdku. I was mixing up which one was the Dokkan Fest, which one was the Carnival LR. I feel like every time I've taken a look at a Carnival LR, I've had a lot of similar things to say where I kind of feel like that they cut corners a little bit on some of the animations and they don't look as clean as they could. They have a couple of animations that look super, super great, but then they are just kind of okay or not good throughout. I definitely think that Omega is definitely not good. I know it's a double negative, but he looks good, right? I just don't think he's as good as he can be. And it is a bit of a shame to see, because I was kind of thinking, well, now that we have these Carnival LRs and we're going to be getting LRs more frequently, then we'll be getting more high quality animations frequently. But to me, it just kind of seems like that they are having an excuse to release more LRs and giving them not as high quality animations as they deserve, in my personal opinion. Obviously, you are free to disagree with me. It's just what I think, right? And it kind of felt like, especially with that with dual celebrations, where it kind of felt like all the quality of the units' essays were kind of down because they had so many more units to do. But you would think that that wouldn't be the case here, because obviously this is just a part 2 unit, and they only had 1 unit to cook with, and they cooked with Goku. Goku's animations were absolutely fantastic. It would have been very, very hard to improve on those. Obviously, everything can be improved, but that was like as close to peak as you're going to get, basically, right? So I don't know. I just feel like personally they could have definitely improved Omega Shenron's animations a little bit. Again, I definitely don't dislike them. I don't think that they are bad by any means. I just don't think that they are as good as they could be. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this guy. Again, I do still like him. I will probably do a couple summons for him if I can actually pull a Goku. I'm still 5,555 stones deep for that man. I still don't have him. But let me know if you guys will be summoning for this unit on JP and when he finally comes around to global as well. And with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Literally as soon as I finish recording the video and click on twitter.com, I see that the boy Jihad has posted the Omega Shenron anime comparison for the animation. So since I have this video and it is here before I actually even have started editing the animation analysis that I just finished doing, I figured I would at least include this at the end of the video, since I like to include these if I have the opportunity to. And I mean, I quite literally have the opportunity to, because I can just edit it into the video. So of course, as per usual, please go check out the full video. I mean, we're gonna watch it in this video, but go definitely subscribe to the boy Giadzi. He does all kinds of these Dokkan and anime comparisons. He always does a fantastic job on these. So let's go ahead and watch through this. Unfortunately, we are not doing this as we're watching through each individual animation, but we can obviously still get a pretty good idea overall. Okay, yeah, so that one shot that I thought was a little bit jarring about Omega smiling was actually how it is. Dude, look how much better that shot looks. Holy cow, hold on. This shot right here looks so much better in Dokkan. Oh my gosh, that is sick. Obviously, it's because far away anime moment, but still, right? Oh my gosh, that looks so good. It is interesting that they didn't decide to go for as heavy shading. You can kind of tell that they sort of tried to do that, where this side of his face is a little bit more shaded. But yeah, they definitely did a little bit more of like a darker sort of tone. This kind of reminds me of like at the end of an anime episode where like they pan up to the villain's new transformation and then they pause, right? I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly what's going on there. Alright, so this is the 12 key super attack. Yeah, definitely with the anime is a little bit more fluid. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, ironically enough, he actually did have like a couple of extra frames. Funny enough, I mentioned about, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Vegeta. I didn't mean to replay that part. With his turning his head, right? He actually did have a couple of more head turn, like shots basically in the anime version, which is funny enough what I was, kind of saying that they should have done in the Dokkan version. It's really interesting that for the part where Omega is twisting, right, for this shot, he's flying upward rather than sideways. I guess for the Dokkan version, they wanted to try and make it a little bit more like consistent with the way he was flying, I guess. I don't know. You can see that they definitely tried to mimic this shot here, and ironically enough, even the long boy shot that we were talking about is taken directly out of the anime, but I feel like it just doesn't work as well for the Dokkan one as it does for the anime, especially considering they have this other shot where he kind of flips around. I see they're trying to mimic it, but in the anime, it just feels a lot more fluid for sure. Yeah, this shot, again, it's just kind of unfortunate. It's literally the sprites that just kind of make it suffer a little bit. Regardless, oh! Well, no wonder this looked a little bit weird. This is Nova using that attack. And then they cut together the I-beam. Very, very interesting indeed. Very, very interesting. They also don't have the little white effect on Omega shooting the air forward. That is very, very interesting. Thank you for skipping that, Giada. I appreciate it. I was going to scroll ahead in the video. Okay. So the funny pink slime. Yeah, it's literally how it is in the anime. How I was talking about how they kind of fade it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, look at that. The anime version is so much more... Okay. So what they could have done, right, to fix this shot is quite literally just... Obviously, I know they kind of have him, like, form there, right? And then they have the full shot of Omega. Maybe they just got lazy. I don't know. Because it seems like what they could have done is literally just had his legs pink in the shot, right? And then had the Omega asset form, and then literally just pan up to it like it does in the anime, and then zoom in like they do in the Dokkan Battle version. Also, I feel like his face looks better in the anime than it does on this one for some reason. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of a weird choice, honestly. This shot right here, let's see. How does this look compared to the anime? Okay, basically, as far as I can see, like, basically frame for frame the same, honestly. They did a very, very good job with it. Let me look at the funny hands. This shot right here, with the hands. Let me go back to that. Here. Does it look... No, I feel like it doesn't look as awkward as it does in the anime as it does in Dokkan. Yeah, they, like, zoom in on his hands, where he's just kind of standing there. Ironically enough, the opposite problem, sort of the other one, or they do too much for this, I feel like, rather than doing too little for their revival skill. Yeah, definitely a little bit weird that they kind of zoom in on his hands like that. Overall, though, I would say a very good representation of the original source material for sure. I always like to at least try to include these in the video if I can, because it definitely makes, you know, these animation analysis feel a lot more complete for me. And obviously then, you know, again, it lets us know certain things that maybe look weird in Dokkan. It's just because they're taking it from the anime. I will say, though, there are definitely a couple of things that they did in the anime that Dokkan definitely was lacking this time around, which is kind of unfortunate, but because I feel like Dokkan's track record is usually lately they've been doing even better than the original anime version of a lot of these scenes. So it's kind of unfortunate that for a bunch of this stuff, it seems like the anime actually did it better, which I know is weird to say, but, like, you know, you would want it for, you know, an anime as old as GT. You would hope that they were basically remaking the animations. You know, you would want them to look better than the original source material if possible. But anyhow, that is really going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Dokkan Assets out. Peace. Go subscribe to the boy G out.